The alarm screamed through the bridge of the Dawn's Promise, cutting through the peaceful silence of deep space. Captain Hansol jumped from her chair and rushed to the scanner display. Her hands moved quickly across the console, eyes scanning the data that flooded the screen. "What do we have?" she asked, her voice steady despite the sudden chaos. Taemin, her second officer, leaned over his station. His face was tight with concentration. "Unknown object, Captain. Small, drifting, no active propulsion. Distance 40,000 kilometers." Hansol felt her stomach tighten. They were 3 days from the nearest colony, carrying medical supplies for the war-torn settlements in the Outer Rim. The conflict with the Varketh had ended 6 months ago, but the scars remained fresh. "Every unexpected signal could mean danger. Life signs?" she asked. The medical officer, Jiwoo, adjusted her sensors. She was young, only 26, but her skills had saved dozens of lives during the war. Multiple contacts. Weak signals. They're alive, but barely. Hansol made her decision quickly. "Change course. Bring us alongside. Taemin, prepare a boarding team." Taemin turned to face her. His expression showed doubt. "Captain, we don't know what's out there." "Could be a trap," noted, Hansol said. "But if someone's dying out there, we're not leaving them. That's not who we are." The Dawn's Promise moved through space like a silver needle threading through black fabric. 20 minutes later, they found it. An escape pod tumbled slowly through the void, its hull scarred with blast marks. One side was crushed inward and frost covered the viewing port. Bora, the engineering officer, whistled low. "That pod took heavy damage. Surprised it's still holding atmosphere." Hansol studied the pod through the main viewer. Something felt wrong. The design was unfamiliar, with sharp angles and dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Then she saw the markings on the side and her blood went cold. Varketh symbols. The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what those symbols meant. The Varketh were the apex predators of known space, 7 feet tall, covered in dark scales, with claws that could tear through steel and teeth designed for rending flesh. They had attacked human colonies without warning 3 years ago, killing thousands. Men, women, children. The Varketh made no distinction. Hansol's brother Kyung-ho had died on Proxima 7th. She still remembered the message from command. The formal words that meant her little brother, the one who used to catch fireflies in jars and cry at sad movies, was gone forever. "Captain," Taemin said quietly, "we should leave it." Jiwoo spun in her chair. "There are life signs. We can't just abandon them." "They're Varketh," Taemin said, his voice harder now. "They wouldn't save us. You remember Proxima 7? You remember what they did to our people?" The bridge crew watched Hansol, waiting for her decision. She could feel the weight of their eyes, the unspoken memories of loss that each person carried. Sung-ho had lost his parents. Bora's daughter had been killed in a Varketh raid. Even young Jiwoo had scars, though she never talked about where they came from. Hansol looked at the damaged pod again. She thought about Kyung-ho, about the last message he had sent her. It was a video of him smiling, telling her about a bird's nest he had found near his barracks. He was always finding beauty in terrible places. "Bring them aboard," she said finally. "Medical bay, quarantine section, full security protocols." Taemin's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Yes, Captain." The recovery took 30 minutes. The boarding team used magnetic clamps to secure the pod and bring it into the cargo bay. Hansol watched through the cameras as they carefully opened the hatch, weapons ready. What they found inside made even the hardened soldiers pause. 5 small figures huddled together in the corner of the pod. They were Varketh, yes, but they were children. Cubs. The oldest looked maybe 12 in human years, the youngest perhaps 7. They were thin, so thin their scales seemed to hang loose on their frames. Dried blood covered their claws and faces. Their eyes glowed in the darkness like frightened animals caught in headlights. "Sweet mercy," Bora whispered over the comm. The cubs didn't attack. They pressed themselves against the wall, trembling. The oldest one, a male with a scar across his snout, positioned himself in front of the others. He tried to bare his teeth in threat, but the effect was ruined by how badly he was shaking. Jiwoo pushed past the soldiers. "They're terrified. Look at them. They're just babies." "They're Varketh," one of the soldiers said, but his voice lacked conviction. Hansol made her way down to the cargo bay. She needed to see this herself. When she arrived, the cubs were being carefully transferred to medical stretchers. They didn't resist, too weak to fight, but their eyes followed every movement, tracking threats with predatory focus. She approached slowly, hands visible and empty. The scarred cub watched her come closer. Up close, she could see he was covered in injuries. Burns, cuts, and what looked like shrapnel wounds. Do you understand me? She asked in Galactic Common, the trade language most species learned. The cub stared at her. Then in broken, heavily accented Common, he said, "Prey walker." It wasn't a greeting. It was what Varkith called humans, prey. Hansel felt anger flash through her, but she pushed it down. "I'm Captain Hansel. You're safe now. We're going to help you." The cub's eyes narrowed. Lies, prey walkers lie. Weak things lie. Maybe, Hansel said. But weak things also survive. And right now you need us to survive. She turned to Jiwoo. Do whatever you can for them. Full medical treatment. They're children regardless of species. Jiwoo nodded, relief clear on her face. But as Hansel walked away, she heard Taemin follow her. Once they were alone in the corridor, he grabbed her arm. "Captain, this is a mistake. Those things killed our people. In a few years, they'll be doing it again." Hansel pulled her arm free. "In a few years, maybe. But today, they're children dying in a broken pod. Today, we're better than what killed Kyung-ho. We have to be, Taemin. Because if we're not, then what did our people die for?" Taemin said nothing, but his expression showed he wasn't convinced. Hansel returned to the bridge and collapsed into her chair. Through the viewport, stars stretched endlessly in all directions. Somewhere out there, human and Varkith alike were burying their dead, counting their losses, and preparing for the next war. She had just brought enemy children onto her ship, enemy children who would grow into enemy soldiers. But when she closed her eyes, all she could see was Kyung-ho's smile and 5 terrified cubs huddled in the darkness. "Waiting to die, Helm," she said quietly. "Resume our course to the colony. Let's deliver these supplies." Behind her, the medical bay doors closed with a soft hiss, sealing away the cubs and all the complicated questions they brought with them. The medical bay had become a prison, though no one called it that out loud. The 5 Varkith cubs occupied the quarantine section, separated from the rest of the ship by reinforced transparent walls and an electromagnetic barrier. They could see out. The crew could see in. But between them lay an invisible wall thicker than steel. 3 days had passed since the rescue, and the cubs refused to eat. Jiwoo stood outside the barrier, holding a tray of food. She had tried everything: standard rations, protein synthesizers set to Varkith biology, even raw meat from the ship's stores. The cubs would stare at the food, then push it away with their claws. "They think it's poisoned," Sung-ho said, watching from his station. He was monitoring their vital signs, and the numbers worried him. "They're starving themselves." The cubs had separated into a defensive formation. The oldest one, Jiwoo had learned his name was Kresh from the medical scans, kept watch near the barrier. The female, Tila, crouched nearby, ready to spring. 2 others, Vorn and Oker, stayed in the middle. And the youngest, Ren, lay curled in the corner, barely moving. Ren worried Jiwoo the most. He had taken the worst injuries in whatever had destroyed their pod. His breathing was shallow, and his scales had taken on a grayish tint that the medical database said meant severe distress in Varkith physiology. Hansol entered the medical bay, and the cubs immediately tensed. Kresh moved forward, placing himself between the captain and his siblings. His lips pulled back, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Still not eating?" Hansol asked. "No, Captain." Jiwoo set the tray down. "I don't know what else to try. They won't even drink water." Hansol studied the cubs. They were so small. Even Kresh, who was probably the equivalent of a human 12-year-old, barely reached her shoulder. Their scales, which should have been glossy and dark, looked dull and cracked. They were dying slowly, choosing death over accepting help from humans. She approached the barrier, ignoring Jiwoo's worried sound. Kresh's eyes tracked her movement. When she was close enough to touch the transparent wall, she stopped. "Why won't you eat?" she asked in Galactic Common. Kresh's answer came in halting words. "Prey walkers. Kill with tricks. Poison food. Weak. Weapons. If we wanted you dead, we would have left you in space," Hansol said. "You'd already be dead." "We don't need tricks." Thela hissed something in the Varkith language, harsh and guttural. Kresh responded, and for a moment they argued. Finally, Kresh looked back at Hansol. "You killed our parents. Destroyed ship. Watched us float in the dark." Hansol felt like someone had punched her in the stomach. "What?" Human ships, Kresh said, his voice growing stronger with anger. Human weapons. You murdered everyone. Left cubs to die in the void. She turned to Sung-Ho. Pull up the data from their pod. I want to know where it came from. Sung-Ho's fingers flew across his console. Already did some digging, Captain. The pod's emergency beacon had data fragments. That pod came from a civilian transport called the Gentle Current. Varketh Registry, carrying refugees to neutral space. And, Hansol prompted, though she was starting to fear the answer, the Gentle Current was destroyed 4 days ago. Caused multiple missile strikes. Sung-Ho paused, his face grim. Human missiles, Captain. From a militia group calling themselves the Avengers of Proxima. The medical bay went silent except for the hum of equipment. Hansol felt sick. She knew about the militia groups, the humans who couldn't accept the ceasefire, who wanted to keep fighting until every Varketh was dead. Command called them terrorists. They called themselves patriots. They were refugees, she said quietly. Families trying to escape to neutral territory. The militia wouldn't have cared, Tai-Min said from the doorway. He had been listening. To them, the only good Varketh is a dead one. Cubs, adults, doesn't matter. Hansol looked at Kresh again, seeing him differently now. He wasn't just an enemy child. He was a survivor of the same hatred that had killed her brother. Different side, same hatred, your parents, she said carefully. They weren't soldiers? Teacher, Kresh said, pointing to himself. Father taught history, mother was... He searched for the word healer, like her. He indicated Jiwoo. Thila spoke up, her voice sharp. They hurt no one. We hurt no one. But humans came. Humans killed. Humans are monsters. The word hit harder than any claw could have. Monsters. That's what humans had become to these children, just as the Varketh had become monsters to human children on Proxima 7th. Hansol made a decision. She keyed in her command code and deactivated the electromagnetic barrier. Alarms immediately began wailing. Jiwoo grabbed her arm. Captain, what are you doing? Something stupid, Hansol said. She opened the physical door and stepped into the quarantine section. The cubs scattered back except for Kresh. He held his ground, though every muscle in his small body was tense. His claws extended, ready to defend his siblings. Hansol held up her empty hands. Then, slowly, she picked up the tray of food Jiwoo had brought. She took a piece of the synthesized protein and ate it. Not poisoned, she said. We don't use poison. If humans want to kill, we're usually more direct about it. She set the tray down within Kresh's reach. I can't change what happened to your family. I can't bring them back. But I can choose not to let you die on my ship. Kresh stared at her. Why, we are enemy. Your children, Hansol said. And children shouldn't have to pay for what adults do to each other. She turned to leave, but Kresh spoke again. You lie. All prey walkers lie. You are soft, weak, you smile with teeth hidden. Hansol stopped. She looked back at the young Varketh, and for a moment she let him see past her captain's mask. She let him see the pain, the loss, the exhaustion of trying to be better than her anger wanted her to be. My brother died on Proxima 7th, she said quietly. He was 20 years old. The Varketh killed him and 2,000 other humans. I want to hate you. Part of me does hate you, but I'm choosing not to. That's not weakness. That's the hardest thing I've ever done. She left the quarantine section and reactivated the barrier. Behind her, the cubs remained motionless, staring. That night, the alarms went off again. Hansol ran to the medical bay in her sleep clothes, heart pounding. She burst through the doors expecting an escape attempt or an attack. Instead, she found Jiwoo inside the quarantine section, kneeling beside Ren. The young cub was convulsing, his small body racked with seizures. His wounds had become infected with something the ship's medical scanners couldn't identify. Thila stood over Jiwoo, claws extended, clearly ready to kill her. But Kresh had his hand on his sister's arm, holding her back. Jiwoo worked calmly, injecting Ren with medicines, applying pressure to bleeding wounds. She spoke softly to him in words he couldn't understand, but her tone was gentle. It's a Varketh bacteria, Jiwoo called out without looking up. Nothing in our database. I'm trying broad-spectrum antibiotics, but... She broke off as Ren's seizure worsened. Hansol watched Kresh's face. The young Varketh was terrified, and in that moment he looked exactly like any human boy watching his baby brother die. Jiwoo, Hansol said, do whatever you have to. Save him. For the next 3 hours, Jiwoo fought for Ren's life. She tried drug combinations that had never been tested on Varketh biology. She used techniques she had only read about, and slowly, gradually, Ren's seizures stopped. His breathing steadied. The grayish tint faded from his scales. When it was over, Jiwoo collapsed against the wall, exhausted. Thila's claws were still extended, but she hadn't moved, hadn't attacked. She had watched a human save her sibling's life. Kresh looked at Jiwoo, then at Hansol beyond the barrier. His expression was confused, like everything he had been taught was suddenly wrong. "Why?" he asked. The same question as before, but with different meaning now. "Because he's a child," Hansol said. "That's reason enough." The next morning, when the crew checked on the cubs, they found the food tray empty. All 5 cubs were eating, slowly and carefully, but eating. Kresh met Hansol's eyes through the barrier and gave a small nod. It wasn't trust, but it was a beginning. 2 weeks passed, and the Dawn's Promise continued its journey through space. The ship had become a strange place, divided between those who saw the cubs as victims and those who saw them as future threats. Ren's recovery had changed something. The youngest cub now followed Jiwoo everywhere his eyes could reach, watching through the barrier as she worked. When she came close, he would press his small clawed hand against the transparent wall. She would match it with her own hand from the other side. It was Okkar who first started asking questions. He was different from his siblings. Quieter, more thoughtful. While Kresh remained protective and wary, and Thila prowled their small space like a caged predator, Okkar would sit for hours just watching the humans work. One afternoon, Hansol found him sitting cross-legged near the barrier, his glowing eyes fixed on her crew. "You have a question," she said, settling into a chair outside the quarantine section. Okkar tilted his head, a very non-human gesture. "Why do you help us?" Varketh law says, "Prey animals act only from fear. They help stronger beings to survive. But we are not strong. We cannot hurt you." Hansol thought about how to explain human morality to a species that had evolved as apex predators. "Humans believe that protecting those weaker than us makes us stronger. We call it compassion." "Compassion," Okkar repeated slowly, testing the word. "We have no word for this in Varketh." "You have word for choosing weakness?" "It's not weakness. It's—" Hansol paused, searching for the right explanation. "Tell me, Okkar, when Ren was dying, what did you feel?" The young Varketh's scales darkened slightly, a sign of emotion. "Fear, pain. I would have given my blood to save him." "That's compassion," Hansol said simply. "You would sacrifice yourself for someone weaker. That's not weakness. That's love." Okkar sat very still, processing this. "Varketh teach, love is weakness. Love makes predator protect cubs instead of hunt. Love makes warrior hesitate. Love kills. Maybe love is why you're still alive," Hansol said. "Your brother Kresh put himself between you and us because he loves you. Jiwoo risked her life to save Ren because she sees all children as worth saving. Love doesn't kill, Okkar. Hate kills. We've all seen enough of that." Over the following days, the crew began interacting more with the cubs. Bora, who had initially voted to leave them in space, started bringing things from her quarters. Small items. A music player, a ball, pictures of Earth. She had lost her daughter 2 years ago. The girl had been 7 years old, laughing and full of energy one day, dead the next when Varketh raiders hit her school. Bora had wanted every Varketh dead for that. She had celebrated when human forces bombed Varketh civilian centers. She had cheered the militia attacks. But watching Ren sleep, his small body curled up like any human child, something inside her had broken open, or maybe it had started healing. She wasn't sure which. "This is for you," she said one day, pushing the music player through the small access port used for food delivery. "It plays songs from Earth. I thought maybe you'd like it." Vorn, the cautious one, approached slowly. He picked up the device like it might explode. When Bora showed him how to activate it, music filled the quarantine section. It was an old song, something gentle and sad about stars and home. The cubs froze. Then Vorn's eyes began to glow brighter, a sign of pleasure or excitement. He played it again, and again. Soon all 5 cubs were gathered around the music player, listening to human songs about human feelings and human dreams. Thila, the fierce female cub, presented a different kind of challenge. She wouldn't sit still, wouldn't ask questions, and refused to show any weakness. She challenged the barriers, tested them for flaws, and glared at anyone who came too close. Bora recognized that anger. She had carried it herself for so long. Want to try something? Bora asked through the barrier one day. Tila looked at her with suspicion. Try what, Prey Walker? I'll teach you a human game. It's called arm wrestling. We test strength against each other. Interest flickered in Tila's eyes. Varkith respected strength above all else. You want to fight? Sort of, but no one gets hurt. It's just competition. They set it up through the access port, arms extended through the small opening. The difference was immediately obvious. Tila was young, malnourished, and recovering from injuries. Bora was a grown human woman with military training, but when they locked hands, Bora didn't crush her immediately. She held steady, letting Tila push, feeling the young Varkith's strength. Harder, Bora said. Show me what you've got. Tila's eyes narrowed. She pushed with everything she had. The contest lasted almost a minute before Bora finally pressed her hand down to the surface. You're strong, Bora said. For your age. If you were full-grown and healthy, you'd probably beat me. Tila stared at her. You didn't break my arm. You could have. Why show mercy to enemy? Because this isn't war, Bora said. This is just two people testing their strength. There's a difference. Something changed in Tila's expression. Not trust exactly. But respect Kresh remained the hardest to reach. As the oldest, he felt responsible for his siblings' survival. Every kindness the humans showed felt like a trap. Every gentle word felt like manipulation. Han Sol found him one night, staring out through the barrier at the stars beyond the medical bay viewport. Can't sleep? She asked. We never sleep easy, Kresh said. Predators must always watch. Even predators need rest. Kresh turned to face her and his expression was filled with conflict. Why do you look at us with pain in your eyes? Every time. You look and I see hurt. Han Sol hadn't realized she was that transparent. She sat down heavily in her chair. My brother died on Proxima 7. His name was Kyung Ho. He was 20 years old and he loved birds. Isn't that strange? We were in the middle of a war, and he kept sending me pictures of birds he'd seen near the barracks. The attack on Proxima 7th, Kresh said slowly. Varkith warriors killed many humans there. Yes. I am sorry your brother died, Kresh said, and he sounded like he meant it. But my father also died. He was teacher. He taught history to cubs. He showed us ancient Varkith writings, told us stories of our ancestors. When humans bombed civilian shelter on Varkith Prime, he was protecting cubs from falling ceiling. He died crushing cubs so they could live. The two of them sat in silence, each carrying their grief like a stone. Your father sounds like he was brave, Han Sol said finally. Your brother sounds like he saw beauty in dark places, Kresh replied. They would have hated each other if they met, Han Sol said. Your father would have seen my brother as prey. My brother would have seen your father as a monster. Yes, Kresh agreed, but we see different. We see each other's pain. Does this make us weak? No, Han Sol said. This makes us human. And I think maybe a little bit Varkith too. But not everyone on the ship was softening toward the cubs. Taemin had been watching the crew's growing attachment with increasing alarm. He saw danger in every interaction, manipulation in every moment of connection. He wasn't wrong to be cautious. The galaxy was still divided. The peace was fragile, and these cubs would grow into adult Varkith with all their predatory instincts intact. Late one night, Taemin sent an encrypted message to Earth Command. He outlined the situation. 5 enemy cubs aboard a human vessel, the captain showing signs of compromised judgment, crew members forming emotional attachments to juvenile enemy combatants. He requested orders. He requested backup. He requested permission to take command if necessary. The response came 3 days later, and it would change everything. Meanwhile, in the medical bay, 5 Varkith cubs were learning human songs, human games, and human words for things their species had never named. They were learning that prey could be strong, that weakness could be strength, and that the color of blood looked the same no matter what body it came from. Hawkar spent hours with the music player now, listening to every song. He would ask Bora what the words meant, and she would try to explain human concepts like love, hope, and dreams. Humans sing about things that don't exist, he said one day. Perfect love, eternal peace, happy endings. Why? Because singing about them makes us believe they might be possible, Bora said. And believing makes us try harder to create them. That is very strange, Okar said. But also, Very brave. In the quiet moments when the ship's night cycle dimmed the lights and most of the crew slept, Hansol would visit the medical bay. She would sit in the darkness and watch 5 small figures curled together for warmth and safety, brothers and sister, enemy children, war orphans, just like thousands of human children across the colonies, just like thousands of Varkith cubs across their worlds, all of them waiting to see if the adults would build a better future, or just teach them to carry forward the same old hatred. Hansol didn't have the answer, but she knew that whatever happened, these 5 cubs would remember that a human captain chose to save them when she could have let them die, and maybe, just maybe, that memory would matter when they grew up, if they grew up. The encrypted message from Earth Command was waiting on her console when she returned to her quarters. She opened it, read the orders, and felt her heart sink. Everything was about to change. The message from Earth Command was brief and cold, the way military orders always were when they asked you to do something that would haunt you forever. Redirect course to Station Meridian. Transfer Varkith juveniles to military custody for intelligence purposes. Non-negotiable. Confirmation code required within 6 hours. Hansol read it 3 times, hoping the words would change. They didn't. Station Meridian wasn't on any public star charts. She knew about it only through rumors and classified briefings. It was a black site where enemy combatants disappeared, where interrogations happened without witnesses, where the normal rules didn't apply because no one was watching. They wanted to send the cubs there, 5 children who had spent the last 3 weeks learning human songs and playing human games. 5 children who were starting to see humans as something other than prey animals. She called an emergency meeting of her senior staff. Taemin, Jiwoo, Sungho, and Bora gathered in the captain's ready room. The tension was immediate. Earth Command wants the cubs, Hansol said without introduction. They want to send them to Station Meridian for intelligence gathering. Jiwoo's face went pale. Station Meridian? Captain, I know what it is, Hansol interrupted. The question is what we do about it. Taemin leaned forward. We follow orders. That's what we do. I understand you've all gotten attached to these creatures, but they're enemy combatants. They have intelligence value. This is war. The war ended 6 months ago, Bora said quietly. Did it? Taemin shot back. Tell that to the militia group still attacking Varkith civilians. Tell that to the Varkith holdouts still raiding human settlements. The shooting might have stopped officially, but the war is still happening, and these cubs will grow up to be soldiers in that war. They're children, Jiwoo said, her voice shaking with anger. They're babies who lost their parents. We can and we will, Taemin said firmly. Captain, I know this is hard, but you're letting emotions cloud your judgment. We have orders. Clear orders. Sungho, who had been silent until now, spoke up. What exactly will happen to them at Station Meridian? No one answered because everyone knew. The cubs would be questioned, studied, and used. They would be test subjects for understanding Varkith psychology, biology, and culture. They would be leverage against any Varkith diplomatic efforts. They would be prisoners no matter what polite terms the military used. I won't do it, Hansol said. The room went silent. Captain, Taemin said carefully, are you refusing a direct order? I'm considering my options. There are no options. This is the military. We don't get to pick and choose which orders we follow based on our feelings. Hansol met his eyes. Tell me honestly, Taemin, if you send 5 human children to Station Meridian, knowing what happens there, could you sleep at night? They're not human children. Does that matter? Is that the line we're drawing? The difference between justice and atrocity is just what species someone belongs to. Bora stood up. I agree with the captain. I spent 2 years wanting every Varkith dead. I celebrated when we bombed their cities. But I can't do this. I won't do this. Me neither, Jiwoo said. I became a doctor to save lives, not deliver children to torture. Sungho nodded slowly. I'm with the captain. Taemin looked at each of them, his expression hardening. Then you're all committing treason. You understand that? This isn't some philosophical debate. You're talking about defying Earth Command during wartime regulations. Then I'm committing treason, Hansol said. I'll face the consequences, but I won't deliver those cubs to Station Meridian. You're relieved of command, Taemin said, standing. As second officer, I'm assuming control of this vessel under Military Regulation 7-3. Captain Hansol is confined to quarters pending court-martial. He reached for the comm panel, but Sungho was faster. The engineering officer's fingers flew across his console, and suddenly alarms began wailing throughout the ship. "What did you do?" Taemin demanded. "Rerouted control to engineering," Sung-Ho said calmly. "Bridge commands are locked out. We're changing course." Taemin's hand went to his sidearm. "That's mutiny." "Yes," Sung-Ho agreed. "It is." For a moment, everything balanced on the edge of violence. Then Taemin activated the ship-wide comm. "All hands, this is Commander Taemin. Captain Hansol has been relieved of duty. Anyone supporting her mutiny will face charges. Security teams to the captain's ready room immediately." The ship fractured within minutes. Hansol's loyalists rushed to secure key systems while Taemin's supporters moved to take the bridge. The Dawn's Promise became a battlefield without weapons. Humans fighting humans over the fate of 5 alien children. In the medical bay, the Cubs heard the commotion. They huddled together, confused and frightened. The humans were fighting, and they didn't understand why. Kresh pressed against the barrier, trying to see what was happening in the corridors beyond. Through the viewport, he could see crew members running, shouting, pushing each other. "What's happening?" Vorn asked, his voice small. "Humans fight each other," Thila said. "About us. They fight about us." Okar stood up, his young face serious. "We should escape. The barrier is controlled from outside. If the humans are distracted, and go where?" Kresh asked. "We're on a ship in deep space. There's nowhere to run." Ren whimpered, pressing closer to his siblings. The youngest cub had nightmares every night about floating in the darkness, watching his parents die. The thought of being back in that void terrified him. The door to the medical bay slid open. Taemin entered with 3 security personnel. He looked at the cubs with an expression that mixed pity and determination. "I'm sorry," he said, though it wasn't clear if he was speaking to them or to himself. "But this is for the greater good. You'll be transferred to proper facilities, humane facilities. You'll be treated well." "Lies," Kresh said flatly. "Humans lie. We know this now." Taemin activated his comm. "Transport team to medical bay. Prepare sedation protocols for 5 Varkith juveniles." That's when the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red. Through the ship's internal sensors, they could hear the sound of fighting getting closer. Hansol's people were pushing toward the medical bay. The Cubs made their decision in that moment. They had a choice: try to escape during the chaos or help the humans who had saved them. "Open the barrier," Kresh said to Taemin. "Let us out." "Not a chance." "Then you will lose," Kresh said simply. "Your enemy comes. You have 3 guards. She has more. You need help." Taemin laughed bitterly. You want to help me?" "No," Kresh said. "We want to help her. The captain, she bled for us with her words. We bleed for her with our actions." He turned to his siblings. "The ventilation shaft. Ren, you're smallest.
Can you crawl through?"
Ren looked terrified, but he nodded. The vent grating was secured, but Thila's claws made short work of it. The youngest cub disappeared into the darkness of the ventilation system. Taemin realized what was happening too late. He rushed to the barrier, but there was nothing he could do. The cubs were taking action, and the ship's systems were in chaos. Ren crawled through the tight spaces, following his predator instincts through the darkness. He could hear his brother's voice in his head, telling him what to do. He reached a junction box that Sung-Ho had described to Akar during one of their conversations. Small claws, designed to tear flesh, proved equally good at manipulating human technology. The barrier around the quarantine section flickered and died. The 5 cubs burst out of their prison, but they didn't attack Taemin or his guards. Instead, they ran toward the sounds of fighting, toward the corridors where Hansol's people were struggling against superior numbers. What happened next would be talked about for years. The cubs used every predatory skill they possessed, but non-lethally. They were hunters, yes, but they had learned from humans that strength could be measured in ways beyond killing. Thila disarmed guards without tearing their throats. Vorn used speed and darkness to create confusion without causing lasting harm. Okar and Kresh worked together to disable security systems and unlock doors. And Ren, the smallest and youngest, crawled through impossible spaces to open paths for Hansol's people. They were terrifying and magnificent, these small predators choosing mercy while using all their terrible gifts. The tide turned within 20 minutes. Taemin's people found themselves outmaneuvered by an enemy they hadn't expected. Human crew members who had been trapped were suddenly freed. Systems that had been locked down suddenly came back online. Han Sol reached the bridge to find Taemin restrained by his own security officers, who had switched sides when they saw 5 Varketh cubs fighting to protect humans. "Stand down," she said quietly. "Everyone stand down." The fighting stopped. The ship fell silent except for heavy breathing and the hum of systems. Han Sol looked at Kresh, who stood between her and Taemin, still ready to defend her if needed. "Why?" she asked. "You could have escaped. You could have let us destroy each other." Kresh met her eyes, and in his young face she saw wisdom beyond his years. "You asked me once why I saw pain in your eyes," he said. "I understand now. You carry ghosts, your brother, my father, all the dead that tell us to hate. But you chose different. You chose to see cubs, not enemies. We choose same. We see captain, not prey. We see friend, not monster." He looked around at the assembled humans, some bleeding, all exhausted. "If our species make peace, it begins here. With choice, we choose you. You choose us. This is how hate dies." Taemin, still restrained, spoke quietly. "And when they grow up, when they're adult Varketh with all their predatory instincts intact, will they still choose peace?" Kresh turned to face him. "We will tell our cubs that human captain saved us when she should have killed us. We will tell them honor exists beyond strength. We break the cycle, we must, or all our parents died for nothing." The Dawn's promise drifted in neutral space, engines quiet while everyone waited to see what would happen next. Han Sol stood on the bridge, looking at the star chart displayed on the main screen. 2 destinations glowed there. One was Station Meridian, where Earth Command wanted the cubs delivered. The other was the Varketh diplomatic enclave in the neutral zone, where the cubs might find their own people. Behind her, the bridge crew waited. Some supported her decision. Others had sided with Taemin and now stood under guard, uncertain of their futures. The division in her crew mirrored the division in her heart. She had defied direct orders. She had allowed a mutiny. She had let enemy combatants loose on her ship. By every military regulation, she deserved a court-martial. But she had also saved 5 children who had already lost everything. "Captain," Sung-Ho said quietly, "we need to make a decision. We're burning fuel just staying here, and Earth Command will send ships to intercept us eventually." Han Sol nodded. She knew that. Every minute she delayed, she was digging herself deeper. But the weight of the choice felt impossible. The door to the bridge opened. The 5 cubs entered, escorted by Jiwoo. They had been cleaned and fed, and their injuries were healing. But they still looked small and vulnerable, these children who had fought so fiercely just hours before. Okar stepped forward. He had asked permission to address the crew, and Han Sol had granted it. Whatever happened next, these cubs deserved to be heard. "May I speak?" Okar asked in his careful, heavily accented Galactic common. "Yes," Han Sol said. "Everyone should hear this." Okar looked around the bridge, his glowing eyes taking in each human face. He was young, barely the equivalent of a human 10-year-old, but he spoke with clarity. "We are Varketh. You are human. This is nature. We are predators. You are prey. This is what we were taught since we were born. Varketh are strong. Humans are weak. Varketh take what they want. Humans survive through tricks and fear." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "But this is not true. You are not weak. You are not prey. You are something we have no words for in Varketh language." Taemin, still restrained but listening, spoke up. "We're your enemies. That's what we are. In 5 years, 10 years, you'll be adults. You'll be soldiers. You'll be killing humans just like your ancestors did." "Maybe," Okar acknowledged, "but maybe not. Captain Han Sol showed us different way. You want to know what we are? What humans are?" He walked closer to Han Sol, and she noticed his small hand was bleeding slightly from where he had torn it on metal during the fight. He held it up so everyone could see. "Look," he said simply. "Red. Blood is red." Then he pointed at a human crew member who had been injured in the fighting. The man's arm was bandaged, but blood had seeped through. "Red," Okar said again. "She bleeds the same color we do." The bridge fell absolutely silent. "We all bleed red," Okar continued, his young voice steady. "Varketh bleed red. Humans bleed red. We all feel pain. We all lose family. We all have nightmares. We all want to live. This is not nature. This is not predator and prey. This is something bigger." Kresh moved to stand beside his brother. "My father told me humans were animals. Weak things that evolved to run away instead of fight. He said they had no honor. But Captain Hansol has more honor than any Varketh warrior I ever heard about in stories. She chose to see us as children before enemies. She chose mercy when she had every reason for vengeance. Thela stepped forward, fierce even now. I wanted to kill all of you when we first came here. I wanted to tear throats and taste blood. That is what I was taught. That is what Varketh do. But Bora showed me strength can be gentle. Jiwoo showed me healing is power. Sung-ho showed me knowledge is weapon. You showed me that being prey doesn't mean being weak. Vorn, who had been quiet throughout everything, spoke for the first time to the whole crew. We learned human songs. Songs about hope and dreams and love. Varketh don't have songs like that. We have war chants and hunting calls. But your songs made me feel something. Something I don't have words for. Something that makes me want to be better than what I was taught to be. Finally, little Ren stepped forward. The youngest cub, who had nightmares every night, looked up at Hansol with his glowing eyes. You could have let me die, he said in his small voice, when I was sick, when the medicine might not work. You could have said, this is enemy cub, let nature take him. But you didn't. You fought for me. Prey Walker fought for Predator. Why? Because I am child. Because children deserve to live. Because blood is red for everyone. He turned to address Taimin directly. You ask what we will be when we grow up. Will we be soldiers? Will we kill humans? I don't know future. But I know this. I will tell my cubs about human captain who saved my life. I will tell them about medical officer who risked her life for me. I will tell them that honor exists beyond strength. And maybe my cubs will not want war. Maybe they will want songs instead of war chants. Maybe cycle breaks with us. The silence on the bridge was profound. Even Taimin seemed at a loss for words. Bora, standing near the back, began to cry. She thought about her daughter, about all the hatred she had carried, about how seeing these cubs had slowly cracked open the shell around her heart. She thought about what her daughter would have wanted her to do. She stepped forward. I vote we take them to the Varketh Enclave. Let them go home. Let them grow up and tell their stories. Let them be the generation that breaks the cycle. I vote the same, Jiwoo said immediately. And I, Sung-ho added. One by one, crew members spoke up. Even some of those who had sided with Taemin during the mutiny now changed their positions. Not all of them. Some still believed the cubs were too dangerous to release, but the majority had been swayed by 5 small predators who spoke about blood being red. Finally, only Taemin remained silent. Hanso looked at him. You'll be court-martialed for this, he said quietly. They'll strip your command. They might imprison you. Is it worth it? Hansol thought about her brother Kyung-ho, about his last message showing her a bird's nest. She thought about 5 cubs huddled in a broken pod waiting to die. She thought about the future, about whether the next generation would inherit war or peace. Yes, she said simply. It's worth it. She turned to the helm. Set course for the Varketh Diplomatic Enclave. Maximum speed. The Dawn's Promise turned through space carrying its precious cargo toward an uncertain future. The journey took 4 days. During that time, the cubs spent every moment they could with the crew. They learned more human songs, more human words, more human ways of thinking. And the humans learned Varketh hunting techniques, Varketh stories, Varketh perspectives on the universe. They were not the same when the journey ended. None of them were. When they arrived at the neutral zone, Varketh ships approached cautiously. The diplomatic enclave sent representatives who were shocked to find 5 missing cubs alive and well aboard a human vessel. The goodbye was harder than anyone expected. Ren clung to Jiwoo, his small claws careful not to hurt her. Will I see you again? I don't know, Jiwoo said honestly. But I'll remember you. Always. Thela and Bora clasped hands, predator and prey acknowledging each other as equals. Stay strong, Bora said. You too, friend. Vorn gave Sung-ho the music player back, but the engineer shook his head. Keep it, learn all the songs.
Make your own someday. Oker stood before Hansol, looking up at the captain who had changed his entire understanding of the universe.
Thank you, he said, for showing us that blood is red, for showing us that children deserve to live, for showing us that choice matters more than nature. Thank you, Hansol replied, for reminding me that mercy isn't weakness, for showing me that even enemies can become friends, for giving me hope. Kresh was the last to leave. The eldest cub, who had been so protective and suspicious, now looked at Hansol with something close to reverence. I will not forget, he said. When I have cubs of my own, I will tell them about you. About the prey walker who was stronger than any predator. About the captain who chose honor over hate. About the human who showed me that being better than my anger is possible. Tell them we all bleed red, Hansel said. Tell them that matters more than claws or weakness. Tell them we can choose peace. I will, Kresh promised. Even if it takes generations. Even if my cubs don't believe me. Even if the war starts again. I will tell them. We all will tell them. This story will not be forgotten. The cubs transferred to the Varketh diplomatic ship. Through the viewport, Hansel watched them go. 5 small figures who had somehow become the most important thing she had ever fought for. When the Dawn's Promise turned back toward human space, Earth Command was waiting. Hansel was immediately placed under arrest. The court-martial lasted 3 weeks. She was charged with insubordination, mutiny, and endangering military security by releasing enemy combatants. She didn't deny any of it, but something unexpected happened. The story spread. The crew of the Dawn's Promise told everyone what had happened. The tale of 5 Varketh cubs and the human captain who saved them reached colonies throughout human space. It reached Varketh space too, carried by diplomatic channels and underground networks. Public opinion shifted. People began questioning the treatment of juvenile prisoners. Protests erupted at Station Meridian. Human and Varketh peace activists cited the cubs' words, "We all bleed red." 5 years passed. Hansel was eventually pardoned, though she never got her command back. She didn't mind. She worked with refugee organizations now, helping both human and Varketh children affected by the war. Then one day she received a message. It came through official diplomatic channels, but the content was personal. It was from Okar. The young Varketh, now a teenager, had written a book. It was called Red Blood, a comparative study of ethics across species. It examined how different species developed moral systems and argued that commonality of suffering could be the basis for universal ethics. The book became required reading in both human and Varketh schools. Kresh had become a teacher, like his father before him. He taught Varketh cubs about human history, human culture, and the captain who had saved him. Thela joined the diplomatic corps, working to build bridges between species. Vorn became a musician, composing pieces that blended human and Varketh musical traditions. And Ren, the youngest, became a doctor. He studied human and Varketh medicine, looking for ways to treat both species. He saved lives on both sides of the old war. They all kept their promise. They told their cubs and their cubs' cubs about the human captain who chose mercy, about the day they learned that blood is red for everyone, about how one choice changed 5 lives, and how those 5 lives changed the future. The war didn't end completely. Violence still erupted sometimes. Old hatreds died slowly. But there was a new generation now on both sides, who had grown up hearing the story, who believed that being better than their anger was possible. Hansel received a final message from all 5 of them together. It was a video showing them as adults, successful and thriving. "You showed us that family is not species," Kresh said to the camera. "It is choice. You chose us. We carry you in our hearts, Captain. Always." Hansel watched the video in her small apartment. She thought about her brother Kyung-ho, about his bird's nest, about beauty in dark places. She thought about how one decision, made in grief and exhaustion, had rippled out to touch thousands of lives. She saved the video, then went to her brother's memorial. It was a quiet place, with names carved in stone and flowers planted by people who remembered. She placed a photo beside Kyung-ho's name. It showed 5 Varketh cubs and 1 human captain, standing together, all of them scarred but smiling. "I think you'd understand," she whispered to the stone. "Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is choose mercy over vengeance. Sometimes the strongest thing we can do is see the person beyond the enemy. Sometimes all it takes to change the world is remembering that we all bleed the same color." Behind her, the sun was setting. Tomorrow she would go back to work helping refugee children from both species. Tomorrow she would continue fighting for a future where Kyung-ho's death and the cubs' parents' deaths meant something. Tomorrow she would keep choosing mercy. But tonight she sat with her brother's memory and 5 cubs who had become her legacy. She sat with the knowledge that sometimes the smallest choices echo the loudest. Blood is red for everyone, and that truth once seen could never be unseen.